Hello and welcome to Tech About Town, brought to you by Communitech. I'm your host, Alex Kinsella, riding solo in the studio today. Guest hosts are all under the weather, which is a thing that happens when back to school comes in because everybody comes home sniffling and sneezing, and it's happening in my house, and I've managed to avoid it so far. But just because I don't have a guest host doesn't mean I don't have guests in the studio. We have Larissa Currah and Selina Miah from SocialHRCamp KW in the studio to talk about the event that's coming up next week on September 25th. Welcome to the studio.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having us. And not with us today is Lisa Moore, who is also one of our, I guess, co-organizers. I don't know how you say it when there's three of us.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Tri-organizers? I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a term that doesn't come up that often, right? Like if you have three co-founders, what do you do? You're all co-founders? I don't even know.
I guess.
They're all co-founders.
All co-founders. You're a trio.
You're a trio of founders.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for this event, so I'll be there next week, taking some photos. So tell me a little bit about how this event came to be. I know it's a global event series, so how did you kind of find out about it, and what inspired you to bring it here to town?
I actually met Jeff about a year ago, shortly after I had started my role at Maple as the head of people and culture. Prior to that, I had been in HR, but had only really led certain verticals within HR. So this was my first role overseeing a full function. And, I had a lot of imposter syndrome. And Jeff reached out and he was starting a HR leaders network. And he had asked me if I was interested in joining this network to meet with, other leaders in a similar kind of boat, in a similar role, really looking for peer networking and opportunities to connect and learn more. So that's how I met Jeff. Fast forward kind of 6 months from that date, he actually reached out to me and said, you know what? Kitchener-Waterloo is really craving an opportunity to have an event where HR practitioners can come together and learn from each other, doing something similar to what we did, but at a much larger scale. And we haven't really done anything in Kitchener-Waterloo for quite a while, like 3-4 years. And so he said, would you be interested? There'd likely be a couple of other people that would do this with you. And I said, bring it on. I don't think I can do this solo, but absolutely, with a couple of others, would love to do it. So here we are today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think Lisa and I said the exact same thing. Jeff is the founder of SocialHRCamp that runs in multiple cities across the world. And his way of scaling has been touching base with HR practitioners and people he knows in his network in those communities to help run events. So that's how we've all gotten involved. And ironically, I was at the Social HR camp he ran. This would have been pre-COVID. And I believe it was at Myovision when he ran it out of there. So I've known Jeff for some time here and there. He has a big passion for running, HR type learning and development events for HR and talent professionals.
I was going to say too, like as a profession, HR is present in every organization, whether it's a tech or not tech. And there's so many similarities, but there's also so many lessons internal to each group that maybe one HR person in one company doesn't think about it in another. Is that kind of the sharing thing that you're kind of looking to get out of this, or kind of what can people expect to take home?
Mm-hmm. So that's the main thing. Let's learn from each other. Let's come forward and talk about things that are going on in our workplaces and ways we've problem solved them and how we can share that with one another. I think what's beautiful about the Kitchener-Waterloo HR community is we've done that for a very, very long time. And I would just say from my experiences of getting to know some of the other HR communities in other cities, the Kitchener-Waterloo one is unlike no other. And we just come together, we help each other out. And I think an event like this, it just continues to provide a platform to do that. So yeah, people will come, get to hear from some really amazing speakers that we have lined up, who are all practitioners in various sizes and stages of organizations, whether they're the head of or VP from a strategy standpoint to manager level, a little bit more hands-on, and at different sizes and stages of how they're handling a variety of topics that we're going to address next.
Yeah, I guess what I would just add, because what you had asked, Alex, was a HR can be quite similar. So what is it that we're learning? The frameworks and principles can often be similar. But the size and scale is what is often different. And as we know, the world is always changing. AI is on a rise. We've got overemployment issues at the moment. We've got affordability crisis happening. So the size and scale of organization is different, but also what's happening in the world impacts how we approach HR too. And some companies have done some things, they're tried and tested, and other like HR practitioners are learning from these individuals. So that's what we're really trying to strive for, is bringing people together that have lived it, tried it. Others that haven't, that are going to hopefully kind of take some actual practical pieces away. And to Larissa's point, what's great about Kitchener-Waterloo is we've had some amazing companies that have started here and really grown a lot of the HR practitioners who have now gone on to work for other organizations in different locations outside of Kitchener-Waterloo, but are bringing that knowledge back and sharing it with others.
Well, because the last 5 years especially have been a roller coaster. Roller coaster is it doesn't do enough justice to the issues that have affected, especially within tech, the issues that affected tech companies. So you've got from everyone going remote, the Great Resignation, retention issues, return to office policies, tariff issues, you name it. And you talked about affordability. How do you kind of see the HR community addressing those, like right now? Like, how do you kind of see that within the clients you help and within Maple?
I mean, that's a loaded question there, Alex.
There's a lot.
There's a lot there. I think I'd love to step back and unpack a couple of things in that. Yes, you are correct. The organizations have been through a lot since COVID. HR professionals have been at the forefront of a lot of problem solving of those concerns in organizations and for employees. And when we look at the profession as a whole, we are in a bit of a crisis as HR professionals when we look at the burnout rates and what's going on. And I think when we look at the impact of the last 5 years, not only on organizations, it's impacted us as professionals as well, which is ever more the reason why we need to come together and learn from each other to help each other and support each other through navigating what is yet another time that we're going through with the tariffs that we're seeing, return to office, social and political issues that continue to go on in our world that impact the workplace as well. So, it's an imperative time for us to continue to come together and support each other to navigate all the change that we're experiencing.
And the truth is, it hasn't been solved. And, I don't think there'll ever be a time where it will be, because things will always keep changing. Our event is actually going to touch on 3 key things and themes that have come up in the last little bit. One is the rise of like AI in the workplace and how we navigate that. And as HR professionals, how we support employees, how we are building practices that continue to allow businesses to move forward, while also ensuring that, there is some form of job security that still exists and helping people upskill. The other is very much touching on the return to office, overemployment, fakes in the interview process, and what does that legal landscape look like for us as HR professionals? How do we navigate that? What are some companies doing that others can learn from? And the last is really around, we talked about engagement, Great Resignation, retention. A lot of that stems from multiple, different things. The solutions aren't always easy, but for sure, retention and engagement at Total Rewards has a direct impact on that. So we're going to have a whole panel that speaks to Total Rewards and benefits and, what is it that we need today to keep the workforce engaged as we think about the next generation of HR.
On the AI subject, because that comes up in, I think, almost every conversation I think any of us have, whatever you're talking about, whether it's, looking for a recipe or, human resources. The thing that comes up with AI in HR that I hear a lot is more on the recruitment side. So it's, using AI tools to scan resumes and cover letters and do matching. There's a lot of controversy of whether that does a good job of it. Is it excluding people? Are there biases built in the models that are, those kind of things. Putting that aside, though, what are some of the other HR topics or themes that AI is having an impact on? Because I really only ever hear about the recruitment side, but internally in terms of like, management, reviews, things like that, is AI starting to kind of affect those or impact those?
Absolutely. I'll be moderating the AI panel, and I just met with all the speakers this week which is, I'm just so excited for the panel and what they're all about to share. And you're right. Like, I think recruitment does draw a lot of what the discussion is around AI right now. Where we're going to be taking this panel, which I'm excited about, is we're going to be talking a little bit more of HR's involvement around organizational wide adoption of AI. So how do we actually strategically implement this? And how are we one of those stakeholders at the table to support that? To touch on what Selina was saying about upskilling in HR and AI, like that is a massive part of HR as a job in the workplace, is supporting that learning and development piece, and the upskilling of AI is one of those. So I know one of our speakers in particular has some really interesting ways that they are, helping that adoption from an organizational perspective. So we're going to be touching on that. And then we're going to segue the panel a little bit to talk more about how AI is impacting HR. So yes, there might be some recruitment pieces in there, but we'll be touching on, how do we leverage AI? There's some discussion of like, what's the business partner role going forward? If we have a function or a feature like an AI chatbot that can tell us what we would need to do and train, like what does this look like from an HR department standpoint going forward, of how we leverage AI and how we support our teams in being more effective.
Just touching on what Larissa has said, a lot of what Maple have been focused on is not just how we're using AI within HR, but how we are also thinking about the point of view that we have as a business, as a company with AI, and how we're adopting it, not just in the tools that we're using, that employees are using, but how we're adopting it in our product. And very much to Larissa's point, like the seat at the table that HR has as we're discussing that, and also the change management aspect of it. We have a big role in ensuring that employees feel supported, in ensuring that, as it comes to communications, we're putting together the right information, the right guidance. So it is beyond just the tools that live within HR themselves, and also how the organization wraps its arms around AI.
I was going to say, like, I think part of the problem with a lot of organizations that mandate a percentage of AI usage, you use AI in a third of your job or whatever it happens to be, there's still so many unknowns about how it actually impacts a company from a legal perspective, what data you're uploading. Do employees know they shouldn't upload financial information,
personal employee information,
and especially within HR, right? Yeah. There's so many things around privacy that you could accidentally, as an HR person, you protect your company from that information accidentally being. You don't want your salaries out there.
No. And I mean, that's where I think this panel is going to take a very interesting take on discussion of what some HR teams are actually having conversation about, of like, how do we leverage it and where do we not? Yeah. Because that is important. There's integrity around how you handle your employee data and information. And of course, from my years in cybersecurity at Magnet as well, right? Like, gosh, what are we putting into these models that are training them, right? And I think that's always a good first step for a lot of organizations. Like, if you don't know where to start with putting some guardrails and parameters around how are we going to leverage AI as an organization? What should we and can we use it for? What are we still thinking about? And maybe as a future state, because if we're being honest, your employees are using it whether you have a policy in place or not. So the sooner you get some guardrails in, you probably are, joining forces with your IT team to make sure you've got certain blocks or firewalls up on certain pieces of things. But I know some of the orgs that'll be on this panel they have their own version of an AI chat bot that they've created to, again, protect some of that personal and employee information that's out there. It's
interesting because it does sound like AI can be treated from a health and safety perspective. So it's just like you're using if you're working, what's the acronym for that when you have to do the safety training at a place, and it's like hazardous material thing.
The WHMIS training.
The WHMIS training for the toner cartridge. We have to do it for toner cartridges.
Yeah.
Right. And I've never injured myself with a toner cartridge yet. Yeah. I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? But with AI, it seems like this is kind of a similar approach now, where HR takes the lead in health and safety, and even from a mental health perspective, because there's a ton of articles about how AI is impacting mental health. So is that ever come up in conversations, or is that still kind of early on that?
I think it comes back to what Selina was referencing around the change management piece, right? Like, I think when we consider just how fast AI adoption is actually moving, and relatively speaking, how unregulated it really is, it does create a lot of fear. And that's where, as organizations and as the change management professionals, we end up being, and that stakeholder at the table is how we manage that conversation internally in our organizations and how we support the team, like Selina's been saying, in understanding how we're going to use it, how we're approaching things to make them feel comfortable, make them understand how and why we're using things. So I hear your point and what you're saying. I've never actually heard it referred to as like health and safety using AI. That's a new one for me.
Maybe I started something.
Maybe you have.
Maybe you have. But I think it's getting clear on how are we going to use this and how are we going to make sure our employees understand how to use this. So, yeah.
The other thing you kind of touched on a little bit there that I want to unpack is AI adoption will vary by generation. So I was actually just working on an article about small businesses and AI, and it was interesting to see like baby boomers in this one survey were like less hesitant to use it, but more trusting of it. But Gen X would use it more, but is less trusting. So have you seen anything yet, or are there kind of conversations around, recent grads? So let's say a 22, 23-year-old first role in a company who is basically an AI native at this point, right? Like the last 3-4 years of using, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini or Copilot, coming to an organization that is very comfortable using it versus, maybe a more safer approach internally where they're coming in Wild West wanting to use AI.
Mm-hmm. I've seen a few different things out there right now. So when we talk about the adoption pieces, just from even looking, if you take a look at any of the McKinsey reports on AI, now I know a lot of that is from US-based companies and a little bit larger scale. The adoption is moving exceptionally fast. Like I don't think we have ever seen anything like this in our lifetime move this quickly. When you look at their report from, say, the fall of 2023 to the middle of 2024, like seeing how companies have moved so fast on it is pretty significant. Where I find some people are lagging is the smaller companies I've seen lagging a little bit. And I don't know if it's a resourcing piece where like they don't have, like if you're at scale, teams that you can dedicate to really working on this to get themselves ahead, but they are moving the dial and they're moving along from an adoption standpoint. Some of the other conversations I've heard from, actually locally, her name's Sinead Bovell, and she terms herself as a futurist. She speaks a lot on a number of the news networks. There was a recent study, I believe Stanford, that just came out, and she spoke to this around how there is a lack thereof of new grad opportunities in the market, with theory behind that AI is actually automating a lot of these roles. Yeah. But to your point and what you're saying, this generation does know how to use it, and they are using it actively. That I would encourage employers to reconsider understanding how students can play a part in your AI strategy. And I think when we look at a lot of the grassroots and ways organizations were built here in the tech community, we leveraged co-op students from the University of Waterloo and other co-op programs, reputable programs in Ontario and elsewhere to help build our companies. And I think we can do the same. And it's an opportunity for companies to really use that as a strategy as part of AI instead of automating and not having an offering for new grad students.
Yeah, to your first question, Alex, what I might add is, AI is new, but it is high adoption right now. And I would say that it's actually quite similar to when we think about when, the internet came about, or when we, had MacBooks come out. Ultimately, the world shifted, people adopted the usage of the internet, and it's come to a point now where life doesn't exist without the internet. We will get to that point with AI. We're not experts in AI. I don't think there's anybody that's an expert. OpenAI for sure are very advanced in comparison to other organizations, but we don't have the experts yet. So people are still learning, but the adoption is high because the reality is this is the way the world is trending. And if you're not keeping up, then really you're not going to be in a position where you can necessarily find certain opportunities, especially if you're, looking for work. Because I find that most organizations today are looking for people that are AI literate, or at least willing to become AI literate. And so, that is the way companies are pushing forward. For sure, the smaller organizations may not have the funds, for example, to have a paid version of an AI tool and are reluctant to use the free version just because of the privacy issues. So there is that. So it may take them longer, but there will come a point where they'll have to, because that's essentially what's making us more efficient and able to work in of the world that it is today.
Okay, let's switch gears out of AI because
We could go on
We could talk
forever.
about it forever.
Yeah.
total rewards.
Yes.
What is what's new in the world of total rewards? I've worked for myself for 6 years, so I don't have any rewards.
Your reward is flexibility.
Reward is flexibility. You're right. It is. I always get jealous of when I see like anything my wife gets. I'm like, that's a cool perk, and then and she's still at the same place, so it's working, I guess. But in terms of total rewards and retention, because it's gone back and forth between a job seeker market and a hirer market.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where we are right now. It's kind of
We're
in
the
middle.
employer.
We're an employer
side of the market. Yeah.
Yes.
So as employers, when they're thinking about total rewards, when the ball's in their court, does that change as the market kind of ebbs and flows, or?
Yeah, I can maybe touch on this with Maple being in the healthcare space, and obviously, essentially, our product does become part of a total rewards package, and is for many organizations actually. But when we think about total rewards, it has shifted. There was a day, and you might remember back to this day, when companies, provided a good salary, a cost of living increase every year. There was a RSP matching, maybe some equity depending on who the business was, and that was total rewards. That, as you can see, has evolved. When COVID happened and the pandemic hit, total rewards, it was almost like we were forced into the remote world, but flexibility was considered a part of a total rewards package. So at Maple, the way that we think about it is there's really kind of 3 approaches to total rewards. You have essentially your core benefits. That's when you think of like your health insurance, your dental, whether you get life insurance, your long-term disability. Then there's what we call fringe benefits, and these are often, parental leave top-ups, whether you get an RSP matching, and then the perks. And, you'll probably hear a lot of the FAANG companies, big companies, they have a lot of perks. They, have unlimited vacation days, or they have flexible hours, or ping pong tables, or slides in the office, like the one that is here. Those can be considered perks. And so total rewards can look differently depending on the demographic of the individuals within the company, what keeps them engaged. But typically they fall within those 3 buckets. How it's evolved, though, even beyond this, what we're seeing is a lot of organizations and their employees are looking for benefits beyond those 3 things. So think mental health benefits. Think additional health benefits beyond just insurance. So access to doctors and practitioners in a digital age where we just, want it to be within the next 5 to 10 minutes versus going to see or trying to book an appointment, that's going to be 2 weeks from now. Think mental health benefits, or even IVF treatment. That's another benefit that's huge, and one that, certain workplaces and the demographics that exist in the workplaces are looking for. Or parental leave that goes beyond the birth parent, that extends to the secondary parent. These are the type of benefits that a lot of folks are looking for now, and companies are having to evolve their strategy to really think about what's going to keep their employees most engaged.
Yeah, it's a massive set when you think about it now, like the options you have to offer.
Absolutely. And I know we talked a little bit about the shift. Is it a pro-employer or employee market? And, some of the clients I work with, I really support the leadership teams in getting exceptionally clear on what are your goals as an organization? What are the values? And then as HR practitioners, we should be looking at that to drive where a lot of our strategy is coming from, including the benefits, right? Like if we really looked at the data of our organizations to understand, wow, we've got a lot of people between the ages of like 25 to 35. Fertility benefits could easily be a big win in that age category, right? Or I'm dealing with an organization where we have a predominantly women-led or women leaders in that 40 plus category. Menopause and support around menopause is maybe something we need to be thinking about. So when you even break that down further to look really at what matters for your organization, because to Selina's point, like there's so much out there, but what really drives home from that retention, from that engagement, is that you're doing things that matter for your employees and for the people in your organization.
You create a culture that people want to stay.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And recommend people.
Yeah. And I mean, a perfect example of that, during the pandemic while I was still at Magnet is we did look at the mental health benefit. You know, we were in a position, thankfully at the time, where we were growing like crazy, just given the dynamics of cybersecurity at that time. So we really doubled down on looking at what we were offering to employees, and we did increase the mental health benefit at that time. And while it might seem small, like the amount of reach outs I had privately from employees to say thank you for doing that, like that actually is going to really matter to me. I think that's when we get to walk away as like HR folks, when we hear that level of feedback from people and go, okay, like that was the right call and the right decision.
Well, it sounds exciting. Podcasts are always weird. So I'm like, it sounds exciting. And then I'll go to it and it will be exciting. And I can't come back and edit this and change it to, it was a good conference. So I will say it sounds very exciting. If you want to go, there are still tickets available. Can you give us just the kind of rundown on when, where, why, when, how, and all that fun stuff?
Sure, yeah. So the event is taking place next Thursday, September 25th. Registration will be at 5:30 and the night will go until 9 p.m. We've got a really exciting lineup of speakers, practitioners and advisors that specialize in 3 core areas that I touched on already. So AI, the legal landscape of HR, and total rewards. And we are going to have some great food. We will also have a fun raffle on the night. It will be held at Magnet Forensics, who have an amazing office that I got to do a quick tour of last week. Really, really great space. And there's going to be roughly about, 150 people there. But there are some tickets still available. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing folks out there.
Big thank you to Magnet Forensics, who's our host venue, and of course, all of our sponsors for the evening, which include Work Tango and Filion Wakely as our gold sponsors, UKG and Workday as our silver sponsors, Maple, as well as Chocolate Soup, who are our startup sponsors.
And a special thank you to those that are donating to our exciting raffle. We have Midtown Yoga, Kismet, Ivy Athletica, Looking Sharp, Beauty Lounge, Sugar by Laura, and Perth County Farmhouse. And thank you also to our 2 vendors, Bigamans and Tough Cookie Co.
Good. And the site is, I'll have it in the show notes.
Yeah, SocialHRCamp. You can just Google that, look for the KW city, and you will find the tickets to reserve your spot there.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to come into the studio and join us and talk about the event. And we look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks for having us, Alex.
As always, if you have questions about how Communitech can help you, you can visit communitech.ca or follow along on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, X, and all the other fun social platforms. If you ever have suggestions for a topic or guests, you can also hit us up on social media, and we would love to have you on. Thanks again.